Okay, in this video we're going to go through the revision chapter of chapter 7. So we're going to start with multiple choice questions, and I'll see how long the video is. I might stop it after doing the multiple choice questions depending how long it goes for, and then I'll move into the short answer. Okay, and also be aware that we didn't cover every topic in chapter 7, so when we get to them I will skip them. Okay, so the equation of the axis of symmetry of the graph shown is, remember, the axis of symmetry is where it splits the graph in half. So your line, pretend it's a straight line, goes through like that. Okay, so remember, symmetry means it's the same on both sides. So basically this parabola is the same on both sides. And the equation of this line, any vertical line is going to be an x equals line, and what is the coordinate of the x is 3, so it's going to be x equals 3, which is answer B. Okay, let's move on to question 2. Compared to the graph of y equals x squared, the graph of y equals x minus 3 squared is. So remember, this is kind of how we started this. Your general form, well, in turning point form that is a times x minus h squared plus k. So a tells you the dilation factor. So, you know, if you have a parabola, whether it's wider or narrower, the h tells us which direction it goes in. So if h is positive, it goes to the right. So for h, and left if we had a negative h. And then the k tells us whether we go up or down. So the k, if we're positive k, we go up, and negative k, we go down. So for this one here, just identify your values of a, h, and k. So there's no, well, the number there is 1. So it hasn't changed, the dilation factor. H is equal to 3 and k is 0. So basically it hasn't been shifted up or down, it's only moved to the side. Now remember, this negative we ignore, we just look at the h. Okay, so that negative is always there. So it means it's moved to the right 3. So translated 3 units right. So your answer is D. Okay, let's go on to question 3. The coordinates and type of turning point of y equals negative x plus 2 squared plus 1 is. All right, so remember, whenever you see a negative out the front, it's a negative parabola. So automatically I know that is a maximum turning point. So you can go ahead and delete anything that says a minimum. Now, when you have turning point form, which I had written before, and I'm going to rewrite it again, your turning point is at the coordinates hk. So for this question, a value of h is negative 2 and k is 1. So your turning point is negative 2, 1. So our answer is E. Okay, question 4. The y-intercept of y equals 3 times x minus 1 squared plus 4. Okay, so your y-intercept, you always let x equal 0. So we have y equals 3 times 0 minus 1 squared plus 4. Now, this is why I always use brackets, okay, because when we square negative 1, we get positive 1. So your answer is 3 times 1 is 3 plus 4 is 7. So we're zooming through these, aren't we? Question 5. The x-intercepts of the graph y equals x squared plus 3x minus 10 are. So to find the x-intercepts, again, we have to let y equal 0, but we do have to factorize this. So let's think, can we think of two numbers when added together give you when multiplied together give you negative 10, and when added give you 3. So we've got to start thinking of the factors of negative 10. So we can have negative 10 times 1 or 10 times negative 1. But when we add these numbers together, we don't get 3. So let's try negative 5 times 2. So negative 5 plus 2 gives us negative 3, so it's going to be 5 times negative 2. Gives us negative 10, and 5 minus 2 gives us positive 3, which is what we want. So we can rewrite this as x plus 5, x minus 2. And you can always check just by expanding it. So you did expanding in year 9, I'm pretty sure. Oh, you probably did factorising too. But that's one way to check, just by expanding it if you like. You can also use the quadratic formula for this one, but you can see how much easier it is just to quickly factorise it. So our x-intercepts, so we use the null factor law. That just means we let it equal 0. So that means x plus 5 is equal to 0, or x minus 2 is equal to 0. Hopefully most of you by now don't have to actually do all this working out. You should be able to see straight from here that it's going to be negative 5 and 2. 2, negative 5. Okay, good stuff. Let's keep going. Question 6, a quadratic graph has x-intercepts at negative 7 and 2. The x-coordinate of the turning point is, so remember your turning point is halfway between the two. So we just simply add them together and divide it by 2. So we have negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. Don't get caught up with that thinking it's 9. And that's negative 2.5. And it wants us to do it as, okay, as a fraction. So there we go, negative 5 on 2, which is a. And just before I move on, you can also just plot it. So your turning point has to be halfway between these two numbers. So if you think of it, it's got to be somewhere less than 2 but bigger than negative 7. So you can kind of think, well, what would the halfway point be? You can even draw all your little lines there if you wanted to. But the easiest way is just to add them together and then divide by 2. All right. Sorry, I'm just going to pause for a sec. So I was just making sure question 6 was right. Okay, question 7. A quadratic rule y equals x squared minus 4x minus 3 when written in turning point form is. So you do need to complete the square. So when you have to put it into turning point, you must complete the square. So y equals x squared minus 4x. You write the first two terms. Then we have b, which is the coefficient of x, and square it. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. So it's really hard when you got to rely on your memory. Okay, so because we added it, we have to take it away, and then we've got the minus 3 at the end. So now we factorize it. Remember, it's x plus whatever, sorry, not plus, it's going to be minus. So whatever this number is in here, so negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2 squared, and then we have negative 2 squared, which is 4 minus 3. So we have y equals x minus 2 squared minus 7. And there we go, the answer is C. If you want to, again, you can easily expand this and you can check it to get that. That's something you probably would want to leave until the end of the test, just in case you don't have time to answer other questions. All right, now let's just make sure we're covering this one. A quadratic graph tells us that the graph has a maximum turning point. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. Okay, so we should be able to do this one. I'm just looking at 10a. We didn't cover too many of the topics that were 10a. So if we've got two x-intercepts, remember that your discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, has to be greater than 0. So basically, we just have to say, well, which one of these is true? So, well, I can see it's there, D. So b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0 when you have one x-intercept. You're always going to have a y-intercept unless your x values are restricted, and we don't really cover that in year 10, but if you go on to do methods, you'll understand that you'll have restrictions on your graph. And this one here looks like it's just the turning point. The graph has a maximum turning point. I think it could still have a maximum turning point because we don't know what A, B, and C are. But anyway, D is definitely the right answer. Okay, question 9. I think we're now getting into, okay, so this is an applications question, which is fine. The maximum height. So if we're looking for the maximum height, we're actually looking for the turning point. So you can, with this one, just put it into turning point form. Don't let it scare you that we're dealing with, sorry, I'm just thinking on the top of my head, H and T instead of X and Y works exactly the same way. Now I'm just, as I said before, I'm thinking on my feet. So I'm just going to take the negative out as a common factor. Just because that negative just tells me that it is a, oh, what am I doing? Sorry, I just realized another, there's so many ways you can work with quadratics and I just realized there's an easier one. So remember your turning point when it's in expanded form is negative b over 2a. So all we need to do is identify a, which is -1, and b, which is 4. So your x-coordinate of the turning point is going to be negative b, which is -4, and then 2 times -1. So then we have 2 negatives, which cancel out, and then 4 over 2, which is 2. The maximum height, so I've written in there x, I should have written t. So t, it happens when t equals 2, so 2 seconds. Sorry. Now, I just have to substitute that 2 back in. Now notice how that t at the start, I've put the negative out the front because that negative is separate to this 2. So when I square t, I have to square t first and then put the negative in. So we're going to have -4 plus 8 plus 6, which is 10. And your answer is A. Okay, so a bit of a tricky one. So if you need to pause and rewind or ask me in class if you're still a bit unsure with that one. Okay, so now we're getting to questions that we did not cover. Okay, so we didn't do 7H, 7I, 7, there's another 7I, 7I, 7K, okay. I'm going to stop there and move and do another video for the short answer questions. But make sure if you need help with any of the multiple choice or just any questions, do ask. Bye-bye.